And we have Jim Cornette here now. We only got 2 minutes before we head to the hourly news break, so I want to get Jim on. Jim, what's going on?
I apologize. I've been editing video all afternoon, and like a dumbass, I had the volume on my phone down and didn't even realize it, so I didn't get the message when your producer called earlier. But I mostly want to apologize to your viewers who had to listen to, or your listeners who had to listen to you and Brian alone instead of me. Wow.
Oh, that's bad.
Normally I don't make a mistake. You know, I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. But in this case, it's my fault.
Okay, Jimmy. So anyway, how are you doing right now?
Excellent. Very good. Actually have a week off this week. We're not doing a television taping at OVW.
Oh, you're not?
We are doing arena maintenance. Danny Davis is on vacation, and I am working on my new home. So it's the first week since I think our Christmas break that we haven't done a live taping, and God, I love it.
Now,
after the flood. Actually, I was off the flood. We still did a taping, but I was packing boxes, and I would have rather been in the Davis Arena than what I was doing. So we take very few weeks off here. We do 47 or 48 new OVW shows per year, so that we beat the folks in Hollywood with a much smaller crew.
Now, real quick, I mean, was everything okay? Because I never actually have spoken to you since...
Actually, long story short, I tossed away about 500 wrestling pictures out of 30,000. Made some hard choices on some old magazines, but not old classic wrestling magazines, and a lot of china was soggy and needed to be rewrapped, but fortunately no family heirlooms were lost in the middle of the catastrophe.
We got a lot to talk about with Jim Cornette, but there's a couple people with cell phones that are calling in, so we want to get to them right now. We're going to start with Scott in Norman, Oklahoma, which is probably the favorite place in the world of Jim Ross, who's one of Cornette's old friends. Scott, what's going on?
Guys, I just happened to catch your show here driving home on Sirius Highlight Radio, and that you're going to have Mr. Cornette on. And I grew up watching Mid-South Wrestling, and I was just hoping that maybe Mr. Cornette could tell me a story about...
A story about Mid-South Wrestling? Perhaps could do that.
Maybe, gosh, off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
maybe something with Bill Watts, anything, I'd appreciate it.
Well, actually, Dave and I were talking in the break, and what I've been doing this weekend, because we're going to the big Ring of Honor event on October 2nd in Philadelphia, I've been going through and putting together a Midnight Express tape set, actually, from the start to the finish, and I watched a lot of the old Mid-South stuff back, and actually Bill Watts called me 2 days ago. I'm going to be speaking to the gentleman that's editing his book, and because I was always a stickler for writing down dates and places, and Bill's done so many things in the wrestling business that sometimes he might slip on where something happened or when it happened.
Can't have any
I'm
of
going to
that.
be trying to help with that, and I tell you, I watched the last Stampede tapes, and I'll say this, and it's not because I was involved in it, because it was Bill Watts' promotional genius, it was Bill Watts' booking genius, and it was Bill Watts' personality. 20 years ago this year, we had 14 dates with Bill Watts and Junkyard Dog when Watts came out of retirement against the Midnight Express. It made our careers, and in those 14 days, we drew $1.2 million at the gate in the states of Mississippi, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. And that, I think, is probably a record, and that's within the space of a 1 month period of time. That's never going to be broken. The money may be broken because ticket prices are sky high these days, but the attendance will never be broken, and I was glad to be a part of it because that's really what put Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express on the map and made other promoters want to hire us in the first place.
So he used to put a pretty good show together with only having 1 hour to do storylines, didn't he?
Oh, it was amazing. It wasn't even about storylines. In those days in that area, it was about getting athletes established, getting competition established, who's the champion, who's the tag team champions, and who wants to be. That's all you really needed. And then you threw the bells and whistles in. But people in that area were used to very serious, very hard-edged wrestling, and they had to believe in somebody to go see them. They had to hate somebody to go see them, but Bill Watts was a master at engendering both of those feelings.
Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express, if you didn't notice, will be reuniting for the first time in... Actually, it would be Jim Cornette, Bob Eaton, Dennis Condrey, and Stan Lane together for the first time ever. Would that be correct?
Actually, on the same side ever, we had the brief flirtation where Bobby Stan and I wrestled Dennis Condrey, Randy Rose, and Paulie Danger Heyman.
Yeah, in WCW. But I mean,
Actually, yeah, the first time ever, we have a dry run in Kingsport, Tennessee, next Saturday night, the 25th, where Bobby and Dennis will be wrestling the Rock and Roll Express. I'll be managing them. That's the first time I'll have managed Bobby and Dennis Condrey since March of 1987. And then October 2nd in Philadelphia for the Ring of Honor. All four of us will be together on the same side for the first time ever. And we're doing a question and answer session in the afternoon. We're going to be appearing at the live event that night. Philadelphia was always one of our favorite towns to go to because, of course, the inimitable Dennis Coralluzzo, and we had a lot of friends there, and that's where we won the World Tag Team title from Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson in September of '88. Philadelphia was always really great to the Midnight Express, and we can't wait for October 2nd. We're really looking forward to it.
You know, one of I remember you telling me one of your big disappointments of this year, as far as professional, you're not, I know that your, aspirations as far as, like, you're more behind the scenes and things like that and announcing and everything, was you were going to work with Ring of Honor and it fell apart. You remember when you were going to work with Bobby Heenan?
Well, exactly. That was a real big disappointment because I worked with Bobby when I first went to the WWF, WWE. Bobby was doing Raw, and we got a chance to work together with he as a broadcaster and me as a manager, but we'd never managed against each other, and that was going to happen earlier this year for Ring of Honor, and unfortunately things happened. It didn't take place, but I hope it will sometime. I wrote Bobby a note. He sent me a signed copy of his book, and in the note I wrote, if you would ever just go ahead and die, then I could be the greatest manager of all time, but son of a gun, nothing. Bobby Heenan and cockroaches. Nothing can kill him. He's the greatest. and if anybody thinks I'm in bad taste there, Bobby would get a kick out of it.
You think you would?
I think he would.
Really? What do you think, Bobby?
Well, Jim Cornette called me when I was sick, and he asked me the 5 great words. I looked at him and he said, "Am I in the will?"
Bobby, how are you?
Good, buddy. How you doing?
I am excellent. I'm happy here in Louisville, and I hope you are in Florida as well.
I did. You sent me the book, and I signed it, and I mailed it, but I didn't put a return address on it. And then nowadays, you can't mail things without that. So they sent it back to the company I sent it out of, like a UPS place. But you finally got it, right?
Yes, I did get it. I thought you just took a while to sign it because you were waiting to see if I'd send you a check.
No. I'm the manager. I mean, we don't have any money. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, listen, Bobby, I hope one day I get a chance to work with you. That's the only thing that I've really never done in the business that I would still like to do as a fan and a performer.
Well, there's 2 things I haven't done is live with you and more. But here's no. Let me tell you something about Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette is really a manager. He really is. I'm really not a manager. I was always a wrestler manager because I could fill in and wrestle if Ray didn't show up, Stevens, or Bachwinkle, or Patterson, or Lanza, or Morgan, or somebody like that, because I just had that somehow ability to wrestle. Jim Cornette was a manager. He had a tennis racket. He had glasses. He talked. I used to thumper words, and thumper means you can always talk as plain as you can. Jim never missed a word. If I wanted to be a manager and grow up, that's what I would have wanted to be, is Jim Cornette. And I'll tell you, my friend, the only reason that more people know me than you is because I choose to go to New York, and you didn't. You wanted to stay where you were from the personal reasons. But let me tell you, you are my favorite.
Well, I'll tell you this, Bobby, I got to come back at you because when I was growing up and I was a wrestling fan and I finally got to be a manager, the one thing I always said was, geez, if I could just work like Heenan, then I'd have everything because I could never duplicate what you did in the ring. You were a better worker than most of the guys you managed, and some of them, like you said, if they didn't show up, it was actually even better.
Well, he said Mulligan. I thought that was pretty obvious.
I know, it was even better for the promoters to get the big manager money.
I will tell you one thing. I'm not as stiff as Moolah is.
Pardon?
I'm not as stiff as Moolah is, so if you ever get a chance, you'd probably want to pick me first.
Okay. But, that part of the industry, I don't know if it's going to be there anymore. The people like Jim Cornette and the manager. I'll tell you another manager. A lot of people forget. And this guy went to some bad towns and almost lost his life. A lot of places was Saul Weingroff. Right, Jimmy?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up watching Saul here in Tennessee, and I'll tell you what, he had he had heat that rivaled Bin Laden.
He had African heat. I mean, it was as hot as Africa. This man had heat.
You know, because, Jim, you guys, I mean, I saw the Von Brauners, but I never saw Saul.
Oh, Saul spent most of his time here in Tennessee, in and out, and various places in the South, and that was a bad place for a manager, as Bobby will attest to on his trips down south. And Saul Weingroff had heat. That's one thing about Saul. He had heat.
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
Well, I want to really quick. We had someone call up who had to leave, but it was a question for Jimmy, and it was about Dick Murdoch and the Hall of Fame, and just wanted your thoughts. And Bobby, you could answer about this one too. Both of your thoughts on Dick Murdoch.
Bobby, you go first.
Murdoch, to me, was one of the greatest hands in the history of this business. Murdoch, boy, you take the lace up his panties, it really chokes you. No, Murdoch was one of the greatest hands ever in this business. Murdoch's only problem was he wanted to be entertaining more than he could have been serious. Had Murdoch been as serious, excuse me, like Billy Funk Jr. or somebody like that, Murdoch was one of the greatest hands there could have been. He could do interviews, he was entertaining, but he was silly like me. And that was Murdoch's, I think, only problem to become the champion. Other than that, he had the ability, no doubt about that.
Well, I tell you, honestly, I agree with you, because I got a chance to manage Dickie, a number of times working for Crockett, and also got a chance to have him come up and work for me in Knoxville when we were running Smoky Mountain. And Dick Murdoch, I teamed with him against Bob Armstrong. I'll never forget this.
Bob Armstrong was the best hands in this business.
Someplace out in the woods, and Dick was having a hell of a match with Bob Armstrong, and I was standing in the corner watching him. And Dick, every time he'd get close to me, he would start telling me a joke, and he'd tell me another line every time he came around that side, and finally he told me punchline while he was upside down taking a backdrop. It was effortless. He could do anything, and he didn't even really try. We were in Baltimore one time, and he had to go 20 minutes with Nikita Koloff.
Well, then he tried.
He was really not looking forward to it, and I told him, I said, Dick, go out there and show them that you're capable of anything. You can have a good match even with Nikita Koloff. He went and he had the only good Nikita Koloff match, I believe, that I think I've ever seen, except maybe with Flair. Went 20 minutes and wasn't even breathing hard afterwards, and came back and I said, Dickie, you did it. You're a miracle worker.
Well, so many people Murdoch has the ability to miss something and pick it up on the other end, like Barry Windham. And Bert Hennig. And Ric Flair. They have the ability to miss the spot, but you never would know it. First of all, the only guys know it is the guys in the ring. People never know it. But, I mean, this guy was so talented, it was unbelievable.
And Dick, he was so funny, and he could entertain you anyway. He could entertain you in the ring, he could entertain you outside the ring. It didn't matter. At the same time, when it came time to really dig in, he wanted to, he could.
Hotel in 1966. Every time a guy checks out of the hotel, Murdoch and Rose still the television. They had 21 televisions in their room. There were only 3 channels at the time.
Dickie was just fabulous, and I loved him and I miss him. I wish I'd got a chance to spend more time with him.
Did you read my book, the thing I did about what him and Carl Cox did, and they got fired in Louisiana?
Yes.
With the chocolate bar? Did you hear that, David?
I think I do remember that one. There's some unbelievable...
Cox had a chocolate bar, a Hershey bar, and he kept playing with it, and he got real soft. So he was one of the greatest guys I've ever met. And first of all, wrestling ladies are called wrestling rats, right?
Yeah.
When I was in Georgia, Ole Henderson fired me, so I left to go to Minneapolis to find a place to live, and I left my daughter with Cox, and he took her to Carrollton, Georgia. And he told me she was like 9 months old. He said, she is now a wrestling mouse.
And we have an unprecedented show today because we have the 2 greatest wrestling managers of, I would say, all time. I haven't seen every manager in my life, so I would just say for sure in the last 35 years, Bobby Heenan
Bobby
and Jim
Davis,
Cornette.
he's around. He made a problem.
That was before my time. Bobby, when you started managing, I mean, I know Jim Cornette, I mean, one of the people he looked at was you. Who were the managers that you looked at, or were there, or did you just kind of like go on kind of like your own tangent, so to speak?
This is a funny thing. The manager, the only manager that was really known by anybody was Bobby Davis, who was managing Buddy Rogers. But they didn't use managers that good at the time. If you ever watch the tape of the match with O'Connor and Rogers, when Rogers won the title in 1960-61, Davis came to the ring with Rogers, but he left. They never even introduced Davis. So my real name is Ray. And when I started, the Bruisers gave me the name of Bobby Davis. Not Bobby Davis, Bobby Heenan, because Davis had left there in 63 or so, and I started in 65. So that's how I got the name Bobby. But the only other managers I knew was a guy named Cousin Elmer, who managed the Rick Collins and Chuck Conley. Remember that, Jimmy?
The Scuffling Hillbillies.
Yes, the Scuffling Hillbillies. And a guy named Red Berry.
Yeah,
and Red Berry was always out on the coast. He was on scene. And I never met him. But usually a manager was a guy that was too young to work, or too small to work, or too old to work, but could talk. And there were very few people that made managers important. Most managers were, like I just said, except for myself and Cornette and a few other people. We changed managing.
Now, where did
Red Berry also really, he started out, he was a
wrestler.
I understand, a pretty good boxer and a pretty good wrestler in his day, but he was fairly small, but he had the gift of gab, and he kind of started the interview part of managing, but still they weren't used in the matches as much, and I think Bobby changed that, Bobby Heenan changed that more than almost anybody. There were a lot of managers in the South, but, for example, Sam Bass managed Jerry Lawler for years, but Lawler did all the promos.
Yeah. Now, where did Ken Ramey fit in? Because that was one of the first managers I saw.
I used to see Ken Ramey in the interns when I was, just starting to watch wrestling, and Ramey was a really good, serious interview, not much entertainment, but he could get heat, and it was more about heat at that time, but once again, he didn't interfere in the matches a lot. There was not a lot of showmanship involved until the crucial key point, and then he did one certain thing. It wasn't as over the top as, I should say over the top, but it wasn't as pronounced as it got in the 70s with guys like Bobby. And then I just took off on that, and I watched Bobby from Indianapolis, and I wish Bruiser hadn't had the bad sense to kick you off so that you left so early, because I didn't get a chance to see Bobby after, I believe, 74. You left Indianapolis, right?
That's right. I left in 74, yeah.
And then, so I just kind of took off on that and what I've seen down here and kind of just tried to do, really, I did I emulated a lot of wrestlers' promos, but as a manager, and tried to find, my own niche as Bobby did, and everybody who really gets over, they take things, because, if you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. If you steal from several, it's research.
Mm-hmm.
But Jimmy, you never did that. You never stole from anybody. You had your own style. I never talked, I was always a smart ass. You always talked, but you were concerned about your man, and you were real concerned about business, and you talked real fast, and you did this and that. And you did something no other manager does. That's what you did, and I did my thing.
Bobby, you're too kind. It's just I stole from so many people that nobody could really tell.
I always saw it as like a lot of Jimmy Hart, though.
Jimmy was an influence on me, obviously, because right when I was getting in the business, right before I started managing, Jimmy was around, and I tried to emulate the energy. But I stole from everybody, Terry Lawler, Terry Funk, to Rodney Dangerfield. I just took anything that I thought entertaining. I tried to, I used to keep lists of one-liners for the right occasion, but at the same time, when working ringside, I really tried to get into what was happening and just react to it. And I always tell the guys here in OVW, it's not acting, it's reacting.
Jim, since you're involved as a trainer and, teacher for the WWE developmental, when the guys come in, and they're all different. You have guys coming in that are big fans and grew up watching. You have guys coming in that are almost cold, and you're teaching them square one what wrestling is. Some of the ex-athletes, for example. But what to you is the biggest misconception or thing that you have to, teach guys that they're the thing that you see that they don't know, as if there's a common thing?
Everybody these days that wants to get into wrestling, they naturally try to copy what they see on television because those are the people that are successful and that have a job. But the problem is
they can act.
It becomes the gene pool is so small now that everybody is repetitive. Find your own thing, do your own stuff, steal from people 30 years ago because what was old is new again. And the most important thing is, don't try to get all your stuff in. Try to make your match make sense.
Yeah, Bobby, what do you see as far as in today's wrestling? I mean, do you see? What if you correct one thing from today's wrestling, what would it be?
I would probably take all the important people in the business and put them in a room and throw in a hand grenade. No, I think what Jimmy just said to me about being your own self. Look around right now in today's life. You know how many, and I'm going to tell you guys who listen to this, morons out there with shaved heads, a goatee, an earring, and a silver chain around their neck. You think you look different? Half of Jerry Springer's audience. Be original. Do something different. That's why Cornette had a tennis racket. That's why I had blonde hair in sequins. That's what we made in this business. The rest of you guys, all you do is stamp your hand and got Carol Hilliard's address. That don't work. You got a LTW, learn to work. But I'm not even sure if that would help if there's a place to go. I know Cornette's got his school down there in his organization, and you couldn't learn from any better. But boy, it's hard today. It really is hard.
Jim, one of the things that what makes it hard is, and this is for your guys, they go from OVW, where you're wrestling in front of, like relatively small crowds, and a certain type of crowd, in the sense of, you learn the Louisville crowd because it's, the guys, they're wrestling in front of like similar, like on Wednesday nights, it's a lot of the same people week after week. Then they have to go, they're debuting in the WWF and they're going to Boston and they're in this arena where nobody knows them after going to a place, after leaving a place where everyone in the crowd knows them. When you've talked to those guys, I mean, how, no matter what they do at the beginning, they're not going to be over because the people just don't know them. I mean, how do they react to that?
I think Bobby will back this up. A lot of that is the fault of the various promotions, because I don't care how good a talent you are, if the promotion does not foster an atmosphere where talent gets over just because they're talented rather than because they've been on national TV for 5 years. If we foster an atmosphere here where winning and losing and championships are important, and if someone comes in and is presented in the right fashion, the people will take to them and give them a little boost. And a lot of the Northeastern crowds are real brutally tough on new kids especially. But the thing is, a lot of promotions, and I could mention them, and they involve Vince Russo, but I don't even want to get in a bad mood tonight, but they just throw stuff out there to see if anything sticks. You have to foster an atmosphere where, okay, I'm going to tell my fans, I'm going to educate my fans that this is important and that's important, and this is why that people should care about this particular wrestler or about this particular instance that's going on, and then it's easier for the talent to show what they can do. It's hand in hand. Bad talent cannot overcome the greatest creative in the world, and the greatest creative in the world cannot overcome bad talent, vice versa. It goes hand in hand.
Jim, also, one thing I also want to...
Right. You could have had the greatest talent in the world, like, say, Buddy Rogers, or Pat Patterson, or Ray Stevens. If the promoter wanted them to lay on their back and do nothing, it wouldn't work. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's the funniest. You can't understand this business. You really can't, unless you've been in it. A lot of guys, like he mentioned that name, Vic Rasso, and for some reason, this guy thinks he can be in this business. And unless you've had to feed your family, your children, and drove and ate bologna for 2 days in a car with 6 guys sweating, you're not going to get this in it. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to understand this business. They think they can come in at the time when they did in the late 80s and 90s, when the business was the hottest it's ever been, and think, bang, I can just cook and make money. You can't do it. There's so many guys like myself and Cornette that have been in the back seat of those kennels eating donuts. And by the time the bag got back to us, they were empty. So we know what this is about, right, Jimmy?
Well, Dave, I got to tell Bobby a story that you'll find the sad irony in. When Vince Russo was on the creative team in Stamford, yeah, well, no, bear this in mind now. He actually was on camera for commentary for the WWF New York show. And he came back from the ring one night with a smile on his face. I said, "What are you so happy about?" He said, "Wow, that's really cool." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I was sitting at the desk. It was the first time that he'd ever been inside the rail while a wrestling match was going on, and he was already on the creative team."
Well, there you go.
It indicated to me that we were in trouble.
What did you say, Bobby?
4 rats have been inside the rail.
Oh, God.
They're my world champions.
There's rats all over the country that had more ring time than Vince Russo did, and he was responsible for what was on television in some cases.
And they probably had better ideas.
We're going to go to Jeff in Walnut Creek. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, Dave.
Hey.
This is like talking to Luthez and Ric Flair at the same time.
I know. And that would be pretty difficult right now.
Oh, my God.
I'm Ric Flair. I'm younger.
Hey, is it true that when Ric Flair came to WWF in 1991, Jim, did they offer you the job as a manager before they went with Bobby?
No, actually, that story has been repeated around and grown. It was kind of a half-ass rib with Rick telling me that I ought to come with him and he could call me the Colonel, because he always calls me the Colonel because I'm from Kentucky, which means only something to people in Kentucky. But there was never any serious discussion of that. I was where I was, he was going where he was, and I think it worked out just fine for everybody concerned because Bobby did a hell of a job.
And you know, there never was anything like that, because if they were giving Rick to Jimmy or giving him to Mickey Mouse, it wouldn't matter. It's a job. As long as you're getting paid and we're working, that's all we care about. Right, Jimmy?
Exactly. And for truth be known, I think Rick, once again, Rick's the kind of guy who, he doesn't really need a manager per se. Bobby was very good with him, and I got a chance to work with him at ringside just a couple of times for Crockett, but Rick's the show by himself. We put us with the people that need help.
You know why? Jimmy? You know why I started?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
You
you.
know why I started as manager?
What?
I don't think Rick could have appeared on TV for us yet, but I could still talk about the belt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
That was
that's
the
right,
whole
that's
thing.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I think it was. Which they never tell you the truth anyway. Anyway, WCW, hold on for 1 second. Remember that team?
Have you been talking to Shivani lately?
Hello.
Bobby, how's Tony Schiavone doing?
Well, that's the other one. I don't know how he's fine. I worked him in December in Cincinnati. We did some voiceovers for a claim for a game show, and he was fine. I have no problem. I don't hate anybody, and I don't get even. I just get hurt if somebody really hurts me. But other than that, I'm not a vicious person. I don't care one way or the other.
Yeah. Jeff, anything else?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome. We're going to go to Todd in Los Angeles. Todd, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Brian. Hey, Jim. Hey, Bobby. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Very good.
Real pleasure to speak with you guys. I've been watching your stuff going back decades, and yet still in 2004 you provided two of my fondest wrestling memories. Bobby, your speech at the WrestleMania Hall of Fame banquet was really a touching and funny thing at the same time. And Jim, I really enjoyed seeing you at Bernie ROH show this year. So it's still, decades later, and you guys are still providing plenty of entertainment. My question for you is, both of you guys were in wrestling at the point when it was still very much heat-driven, where the fans really, where fans calling up in this sort of show would be saying all sorts of nasty things to you guys. I'm wondering what
Not
you
in
guys
this
think.
show, but I know what you're saying, though.
So this show probably wouldn't have been on radio 15, 20 years ago. So.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? And it would have been more successful if it had, but you're right, it wouldn't have been. That's a real weird dichotomy sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, what do you guys think about the dying out of the I'll kill you heat, for lack of a better way of phrasing it?
Well, it's a whole lot easier on the body, I'll tell you that. Actually, I'm moving to a new house soon, and finally going to be in one place for the rest of my life. and I've been packing up my office, and I found 3 arrests and 2 lawsuits I forgot I even had. And I'm sure probably went through a lot more than I did because his greatest success was in the decade before I got started, which, the heat had died down, and I still had a lot of trouble. So I can imagine what Bobby went through. But, it's sad in a way because even though we don't have to worry about dying now and being killed or shot or stabbed, whatever, the passion and the emotion when you were in the arena is something that I still kind of miss because it kept the people coming back week after week and month after month, and it was something you could feel, and we did a really good job. You could be satisfied with it. As long as, like Bobby said, as the check's still cash and you don't have to worry about hospital bills, it is a little easier on your well-being.
Like Jim just said, you come back from the ring some night, and they'd be throwing chairs and they'd be putting everything on you, people jumping at you, and the police would be trying to keep them back. And you thought to yourself, why am I doing this? But then the next thing you think, excuse me, we're going to come back next time and grow up bigger and better. And that's the way you thought, that's the way they made you think.
I retired from the business in 1984 7 different times, all at ringside.
Pardon?
I retired 7 different times in 1984, all at ringside. I said, if I get back alive, I'm quitting. I'm never doing this again. And once you get that, you have a piece of every time.
Nothing home.
Jimmy, do you go to the WWE shows in Louisville?
Yes.
What's the difference between like the crowds at the Davis Arena that follow the Ohio Valley storylines and the crowds that go to the WWE shows?
Well, the WWE crowds are a lot bigger.
Well, are like the OVW fans more passionate?
Yeah, that's one thing I will say, and that we're proud of, is the people that come to our tapings every Wednesday night, and people when we run Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom in the summertime, and we 6 shows again this season, all between May and August, and averaged over 1,000 people every show. And they really know what's going on. They're passionate. They yell, they scream, they jump up and down, and sometimes from the opening match on, they're more dedicated than, because the WWE gets a lot of fans who just come because the big stars are in town, and that's who they want to see. So they're not as forgiving for some of the opening matches and some of the younger guys. And I like that for the guys. It gives them more confidence when people are into their match, regardless of whether it's for the World Championship or just the opening match.
Well, I see Ohio Valley almost like he was talking about as far as an older time heat, where they seem more like they're really angry about certain things. Whereas, like the WWE crowd,
actually not. They do get angry at the guys that they don't like, but by the same token, I haven't been anywhere, and I don't go to Puerto Rico, so I'm probably safe in saying this, that there's no place in the country that has the same type of emotion and passion and feeling in the arenas that happened 20 and 30 years ago. It just doesn't exist now because it's not a life or death thing now. It's not. Nobody is willing to go to jail to get a chance to stab, cut, or punch the guy that they don't like.
That's good.
That's not a bad thing. But,
I mean, there's a part of it that's not good, but overall, that part of it, the fact that no one's having you is good.
No, I tell you what it is. You know what it is?
What is it?
You watch TV today. You get kidnappings. You got a war on TV with people being killed. You got people being kidnapped. You got people being murdered by their husbands and by their wives. You can't find any bodies. So when people are going to read it, man, did somebody cut my bullet in half? I mean, it don't work the way anymore. We can't get as much heat as there is really in this world.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the same token, also, it used to be that the normal people came to see the gimmicks in the ring, and now there's more gimmicks in the audience than there is in the ring. It's fine.
Todd, anything else?
Actually, that was the only question. But I had one comment before I got off. Jim, I've been listening to you rail on Russo and the problems with wrestling for a number of years now, and I usually agree with you. I don't think it's necessarily possible, but I hate Russo almost as much as you do.
Not as much as Brian. Oh, go ahead.
Unfortunately, when you're talking about all the problems there, you're preaching to the choir here in terms of people that sort of love wrestling. And a lot of the criticisms you make of Russo have become really prevalent in Stamford and WWE in the recent years. And so I was just going to go before I said, please, stand up and say these things when you can to the WWE guys, because I know most of us can't get anywhere near them, and you are in a position to at least at times influenced them and let them know, when they're making mistakes? Because I'm sure you know a lot better than I do and a lot of other people do when they are making those mistakes.
Well, I've been told many times that I express my opinions way past the point of tiresomeness. However, the thing with Russo is totally different because, whether you like what Vince McMahon does or not, he's made a lot of money and he's sold a lot of tickets in the wrestling business. Vince Russo, in my opinion, has no respect for. He thinks you can go to the gym and get 20 bodybuilders and that's wrestlers, and as long as he's around, he's the messiah of wrestling and can right all the wrongs and draw all the money and beat Ric Flair and beat Hulk Hogan, whatever.
Jimmy.
That Russo's thing is he has no respect for the business or the people in it, and that's what I have the major problem with, because it just doesn't make sense. Even in an illogical business, you got to make sense, and Russo doesn't make sense just because he doesn't feel like he has to.
Bobby, go ahead.
First of all, this guy Russo, when I was in WCW, he thought he could get actors and do the same thing as the wrestlers do. You know what the biggest fault with Russo, with us is with Russo? Is we worry about him. He's no threat to anything. Forget the guy. He's doing this to get a job. He doesn't have any talent, no ability, or nothing. Jimmy Cornette does. David Meltzer does. Bobby Heenan does. And the fans that like wrestling have quality. This guy is just, he should be outside the Shea Stadium selling hot dogs. That's it. That's the truth. I mean, where has he been that he's proven himself to be productive?
Well, I mean, I know you can talk about those couple of years with Austin, but
Well, yeah, when he's the biggest star in the business, the biggest promoter in the history of the business, and the great production staff, and etc., it's hard to fail, and he still actually managed to on a number of occasions.
And I want to get one last phone call in. This is Brian. Jacksonville's been waiting for a long, long time. Brian, you're up with Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for Jim and Bobby, over the years of watching wrestling, I found one of the best parts to be the announcers and Jim Ross and the King and the living legend with the Disco. But after watching SmackDown last week, when the announcers went off for a while, it made me wonder what the future WWE is going to be without Jim Ross.
Nobody wants to say anything?
Oh, okay. Actually, JR, I'm a big fan of JR's. I'll say that right off the bat. I was a big fan of Bobby when he was doing his heel color work. I think the good announcers are in short supply because, unfortunately, there's not enough programs for them to get experience on these days. But there'll always be somebody that comes to the top, hopefully, that just knows the business and knows how to get the points over. And before we run out of time, because I'm going to give Bobby the last word, I just want to say I didn't know I was going to be on with Bobby tonight until he showed up on the phone. I got ambushed, and I appreciate it because my birthday was 2 days ago.
Well, that's why, because it was your birthday, Jimmy.
That's what ever given me.
That's what I was doing it for your birthday.
God bless you, Dave.
Okay.
You're not bad, no matter what everybody says.
I know. Bobby, finish it up.
I have no idea what they're doing there because I've been tied up in a room in the morning with a Korean maid, and I'm not sure I'll get a duct tape this off my eyes, but I will tell you this. Jimmy Cornette is the damnedest manager you're ever going to see, and talks it, and I love him. And if you want to see him and his productions or anybody around, anything he's involved with, please go do it. He's a class guy, believe me. If I get all the duct tape off me, I'll find Lula.
I do want to mention, we sometimes talk about OVW. You can go to obwrestling.com, and there's info. You can actually subscribe to the OVW TV show. It's kind of like the booking of Old Mid-South Wrestling. It's very similar to. So if you liked Old Mid-South Wrestling and want to relive those kind of storylines, not exactly the same thing, but it's close we got.
Bless you, Dave, and Bobby, I still can't take the over-the-top rope bump like you.
Mid-South Wrestling is like Jockage.
Anyway, we got to get running. We'll see you all next week.